appropriateness for properties in the historic district and for landmarks. In considering whether to approve or disapprove of an application for a certificate of appropriateness, the Historic Review Board shall be guided by the City of Fredericksburg design guidelines and standards and the Historic Preservation Ordinance. If anyone present tonight wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to any item on today's agenda, please sign up on the list in the back of the persons to be heard sheet. It is not necessary to sign up to speak if you are the owner of or representative for a project on the agenda tonight. You will be called on as the case is called. Approval by this board does not take the place of any type of permit. Permits must be obtained for all work. No work of any type is to be started without obtaining the appropriate city permits after a certificate of appropriateness has been issued by the Historic Preservation Officer. And I would like to acknowledge Mr. Richard Laughlin here. Great. Are there any public comments? Did anyone sign up this evening? Okay, great. Board members, I ask you to look at item number 5, approval of last month's meeting. Do you have any additions? I've got one on page 6, top of the page. Who made the motion for application 22-087? Looked like it just cut off. Page 7. Top of page 7. Okay. I remember Jessica made the first motion that died for lack of second, but I can't remember who made the. You just check the meeting notes there and make that addition. Any other edits? Not, I'll take a motion to approve with the subject to the one change. Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Great. Moving on to item number 6, certificate of appropriateness applications. We'll start with the consent agenda. The items under the consent agenda are deemed by the Historic Preservation Officer to be routine in nature and will be approved by one motion of the board, adopting the staff's findings and recommendation as part of the approval. The items of the consent agenda will not be discussed. Any member of the board or public that wishes to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed and placed on the individual consideration agenda. Do we have any board members that would like to pull an item from the consent? Any members of the public? If not, I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. If you're here this evening and your item applications were on the consent agenda, you're free to go, or you're welcome to stay for the evening. So, and Stan, I would like to say that I really appreciate your application. It's very thorough and complete, so it makes our job much easier. So, yeah, change. So, anyway, nice piece of work. So, you guys don't have to stay. Moving on to individual consideration, we'll start with item number D, application 22-099610 West San Antonio Street. If you're here representing that, please come to the podium and introduce yourself. Walk us through what you'd like to do.
Hi, good evening. I'm Thomas Austin. I own the house along with my wife, Annabelle. So I think there are 2 items on the agenda, and we're starting with the proposed addition or expansion of the existing ADU at the back of
Okay.
the property. We're the proposed sort of outline of the structure is here on the screen. This just sort of the floor plan, basic floor plan. Will be a single story structure. On the, I guess, west side is the existing ADU, which we would create 2 bedrooms out of. The front portion of it right now is used by me as an office on a daily basis, and then there is a bedroom at the back, and then there's a existing lean-to structure which you could see on one of the photos in the submittal, that would be removed, and the new addition would then be incorporated into the side of the building. So those, just at the top point of the arrow, all the way to the back, is that existing sort of addition to the ADU as it stands. So that in talking with Anna and discussing it over the last few months, I think we both felt and agreed that that was likely added onto, that it was maybe a porch at one point, and then it was enclosed in at some point in time. I don't know the timeline of when that occurred, but the primary purpose of this structure actually is we are trying to figure out what to do with respect. My mother-in-law is sick, and so we're looking at this as a potential option to help care for her, and then my father-in-law would live in the structure as well. So this is kind of one idea that we had come up with. We don't really envision this as a income producing piece of property at this point in time, but even in the future, it doesn't really lend itself to that based on the driveway and the fact that it is at the back of the yard.
Right.
But aside from that, rather than going on and on about it, I don't know if you have any sort of outline questions for me that I could answer and speak to.
Before we get to those from the board, Anna, would you walk us through your findings?
Yes, application 22-099, 610 West Austin. It's an R1 zone and it has a medium rating. I've cited the sections of the design guidelines for additions, including height and massing, lot coverage, site layout, and a new structure or additions to existing structures. The site addition to the historic aged out building is not historic and can be removed without impacting the integrity of the structure. Item B, the proposed ADU addition is appropriate in materials and height. The size of the new ADU is close to the same footprint as the main house. Per section 3.141G, the addition to the existing ADU encloses the entire east facade. For item 3.3C. The site plan also shows that the addition will be built within the rear setback. For the zoning requirements, this would require a variance from the zoning board of adjustment. So those 2 items that I cited, 3.41G. In areas zoned R1 and R2, the footprint of any single accessory dwelling building, commonly referred to as an ADU, shall not cover a larger footprint of the lot than the primary building. And 3.3C. For site additions, you use hyphens to connect the addition to the historic building while minimizing the impact on adjoining historic building fabric. The site addition should be pushed back as far as possible so as to retain the original site elevation.
Now, questions for the board? Just for clarity, because my eyesight was a little bit challenged when I was looking at your drawings. What is the footprint of the existing primary structure?
It's the exact number. It's just right around 20. What did I give you, Anna? I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's right just over 2,000 square feet, And then we have plans to expand that. It would be 2,500, I think. Total.
But, I mean, the existing two-story house?
Oh,
The existing footprint?
yeah, the main house.
The main house?
Correct. Is about 2,000, just over 2,000 square feet today.
Okay.
And this proposal, inclusive of the expansion, the ADU, is about 1,820.
I came up with a little bit different, but the numbers that I came up were still that your new ADU was slightly less than the existing footprint. So I just want to make sure that was clear. And
Yes, we both ran some numbers, and I wasn't quite comfortable that we'd gotten to a final number. So it was really close. But I mean, the point of that, right, is that it should be an ADU, an accessory unit, not a primary. But this is a two-story house, and then of course the ADU is a single story. So it's close. I mean, I will go back and look at your numbers. But the footprint does include porches. It's not
Right.
square footage. It's not conditioned. It's the entire footprint, including porches.
yeah,
Is
my
that how the-
calculations were slightly that the proposed ADU total would be slightly less than the existing primary structure, which is looking at our ordinances in keeping with. So
Does the ordinance include porch square footage in the defined total? That
it's footprint of the existing building, so it is the building footprint. So it doesn't cover square footage for the 2 stories. It's just the existing footprint. So,
okay.
so board, what questions might you have, Mr. Austin? This is the time usually I can tell if the board has looked at their documents ahead of time or not. So, but it sounds like there are no questions for the applicant. So if there are none for further discussion, would entertain a motion to approve or deny.
I guess my concern is that we're really creating a big house in the back of the house. I know you're gonna use it for your folks, but I don't think guarantee that a year from now.
I'm sorry.
We don't have anything to guarantee that from a year that it doesn't get put into another STR.
Okay.
I've got a question for Anna. Are there any of our ordinances that the application is not compliant with as far as what we're size or height, or it appears to have met the existing ordinances?
You're talking about city zoning
Yes.
ordinances? Yeah, the only issue is, as I mentioned, the setback. It's slightly encroaching on the rear setback.
Right.
But other than that, I don't do the density calculations. That comes at a later point, but given the size of the lot, my best guess is it's fine for the density and the lot coverage for the zoning code.
But just clear on procedures, so there is some breach of the setback on the north side of the lot. So if the applicant were to receive an approval, then it would have to go to P&Z to get the setback variance, because we can't do that.
To zoning board of adjustment, yes, sir.
The board adjustments.
In addition, I just also wanted to point out one item. R1 is intended for single-family residential use only, and that allows for one primary dwelling unit to be occupied on a permanent basis. It would not allow for 2 dwelling units to be fully occupied permanently. Can you say that again? Yes, ma'am. R1 is single-family residential and allows for one primary dwelling unit to be occupied on a full-time basis. It would not allow for two dwelling units to be occupied full-time.
What would it allow, a 1-year lease?
No, sir, that would be essentially a long-term rental, and that's a full-time occupancy, and that would not be allowed in R1.
Daniel, you have any insight for us here?
This is sort of a slippery concept, particularly if it's all the same family. I mean, if I don't know what the plans are, what your family's plans are for the use of the property, but staying there with some sort of, for some indefinite period of time as a guest would be okay. Where it would cross that threshold from exceeding that into being considered, I guess, multifamily. It's hard to say. It's not a bright line test. It's really fact dependent. I don't know that really. I don't know if that really impacts your decision as far as the use, because we don't know what the future use is going to be. I mean, it could change next week anyway. So.
Also, that's not our purview either, correct? That's under.
That's what I'm saying is that you could approve it with something in mind, and the use could change anyway. You don't really have any control over that. As long as the use is allowed by the zoning, it's okay. Any R1 use would be allowed.
Okay. So, I mean, applicant's clear on that. This board doesn't have the authority to grant full-time occupancy on both the primary and the ADU. So, all we're subject to is our ordinances, which look at size of structure, materials used, how does it fit in with the context of the lots, just so we're clear. You might have another hurdle. I'm just saying. Okay.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve application number 22-099 as submitted.
Is there a second? Okay. Discussion. Further discussion.
I think this goes back to city staff. If they're basically asking for R2 zoning on this lot, this shouldn't even have came to us until that was clarified. So I'm really uncomfortable moving forward with this board approving something that's going to be a zoning violation possibly. And Anna, do you know the date on the existing accessory building?
Not exactly, but it seems to be the same period as the main house.
So with that case, I think if we did have a design that was zoning appropriate, we should have a hyphen in there rather than butting up entirely on the east side.
That's C1.
Yeah. For typical requirements.
Richard, question on that. On the east side, you have that lean-to structure. So what would you propose if you remove that to be in its place? Like what is appropriate?
I think there's options there. I'm just going by what the code says.
I understand.
Offset that, if you were going to leave the lean-to and go up against it, you would hyphen or do some type of a setback, not a flush wall.
So no conditioned space between the two structures?
Well, you could have conditioned space, but you could inset a couple of feet, typically is what we see down a lot, just to show that that building was there in its own space and time, and then you add it onto it. Is the way that's handled several times. But I'm really uncomfortable with us moving forward with approval if it's in the wrong zoning, and they're asking for basically R2 zoning.
Well, the application is not asking for the rezoning specifically. It's just asking for the addition on the structure. So it's up to the applicant to abide by zoning restrictions, and the intended purpose is up to the applicant, whether it's it's part-time or weekend, family or whatever. We just don't have any control on what the occupancy is going to be.
All right. That's why I think it should have been clarified before it got to us.
Yeah. One second.
But there's still the issue of the addition not showing its addition on the building.
The what?
There's the issue of the addition not showing its addition on the building, and then typically if we were going to add onto a building that size, we wouldn't allow 1,000 square foot or 2,000 square foot addition onto a building that was 800 square feet or however big the existing building is.
That's my objection. I just feel it's too big.
So if you're going to say you're going to add onto that building, what's the square footage of that? Then that's how the guidelines would fall, in my opinion.
So a possible option would be to just push it over to the east and have it just a separate building. Yeah,
I mean, that's one option, but what's the square footage of the existing structure? No, the existing structure in the back.
It's probably about between 600 and 800 square feet.
So typically we wouldn't allow more than that much addition to be put on the building.
Is that in the code?
I think so.
It's not stated exactly like that.
Okay. How is it stated?
it's stated for new auxiliary dwelling units. They can be up to the same size as the existing primary.
But this is not a new, it's an addition,
Fair point. Yeah.
right?
Well, it's in addition to an ADU.
Yeah.
Right. So if the applicant wanted to move a new ADU separate, they could still build it approximately the same size to the primary structure, convert this to a shed or something.
I'm just trying to get
No,
consistency.
that's fair point.
But if it's adjoining, is that constraint again? Because that adjoining, is that constraint again? Because that's news to me. The square footage constraint.
You want to clarify, Anna? I'm just kind of going by what we've done in the past.
The guidelines don't speak, it says for new ADU, and in my reasoning, we would treat this like a new ADU because that's how it's going to be used. But our design guidelines don't speak specifically to the size of additions. It talks more about height and appropriateness. And we don't have that kind of absolute like we do with the size of new accessory units. And that was really hard to write, you'll remember, because we've got tiny houses.
Right. A lot of time on it.
And so when you compare it to the lot versus the house, you could have a tiny house on a huge lot, you can have a large house on a tiny lot. And so those ratios are really hard to come up with. But I think the intent, if we understand the intent of the design guidelines, I think that's where Richard's headed.
Yeah.
But for the addition, it's not as black. For additions, it doesn't have that absolute maximum as it does for ADUs.
Yeah. The fact that it all lines up is overwhelming.
Right. The issue is just the size.
Yeah.
Size. Yeah. And just discuss further discussion. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? So just for clarity, can you reread the motion?
Michael McRae made a motion to approve the application as presented. Lily Welliver seconded the motion.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Or those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
So that's 3-2. So motion does not carry. So the application has been denied.
Okay.
So
I think you still have to take some affirmative action, whether it's approving or action to deny it. So
the action has been denied on this application. So
the motion to approve it did not carry.
Oh, excuse me.
So you still need some motion to carry, or it'd be considered no action, and then it would automatically be approved after 60 days. So
thank you for the clarity. So basically, we're back to square one. So I need another motion to approve with conditions or deny the application as presented. And as a reminder, if we take no further action, then in 30 days, Daniel.
you have 60 days to
60
take
days.
action. If you don't take any action within 60 days, it's deemed to be automatically approved as submitted.
Great. What do you guys want to do?
I make a motion that we deny the application 22-099 based on the guideline 3.3 additions, height and massing. I just feel the building's too big.
For a second,
I'll second.
discussion on that motion to deny the application. Okay. Shelby, can you read that motion just for clarity, please?
Amy Slaughter made a motion to deny the application based on a section code that I missed, seconded by Joe Salinas.
3.3 additions, height and massing, section C.
Those in favor of approving the motion, which is to deny this application, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed to the motion, please same sign. That motion carries 3-2, which is a denial of your application as presented. For the applicant's sake, is it possible the board can give them some suggestions on ways to improve the application?
I think the first thing is I'd have to go through the zoning process, right, Richard?
Be good to clarify that.
Okay, so that's step one. Then step two is design. I would like more clarity as to where in the code it specifies that the size is problematic if we're able to come to a compromise in terms of design based on the separation between the two parts of the building.
Okay.
So it's clear to me what my next steps are, except for
It's the
the
code that
size
Amy
issue.
just quoted. The one you quoted, the size and scaling.
Just for clarity, Shelby, can you make sure that the applicant gets a hard copy of that section so he knows?
Yes, sir.
This for site additions use hyphens to connect the addition to the historic building while minimizing the impact on adjoining historic building fabric. The site addition should be pushed back as far as possible so as to retain the original side elevation.
Okay, that says nothing about size. I don't think, because if I'm going to continue this process, I don't want to come back to you guys with a design that is wasting your time. I want to be respectful of that as well. And so the point being made is I don't think that what we're trying to do is taking away from the existing historical structure. Its purpose is to design and retaining that. And I think you can do that with the size that we are contemplating. I think you can achieve that. But if I'm going to be denied on the basis of square footage, I think for my own sake, I think that needs to be explicitly clear within the guidelines, and it's not.
Thomas, can you clarify if what you're showing, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Are these walls, do they exist now?
They do.
Okay. So when,
Actually, the one where the pointer is right now exists with certainty. The one above, actually it does, because that is a dividing line between the existing bathroom and that bedroom. So yes, that is an existing wall.
If the this question for the board, just try to help tease out a little bit more direction for you. If the applicant were to build a new ADU farther to the east of the same size. Is that a benefit?
So there was
Is
an
it just the
issue with,
of connecting the old ADU, the existing ADU, and
I thought that there was also a desire to not end up with a mass of buildings, separate buildings on a lot either, if I'm correct. So that's part of the sensitivity that we're coming to this with, is to not make it look like, for lack of a better term, a manufactured housing community with multiple structures other than what is there and historical. I mean, we're trying to retain and preserve as well as make additional use out of the property itself.
I mean, it sounds like there's maybe two issues.
Mhm.
One is that the new addition on the existing ADU, it doesn't really show any separation between the old structure and the new structure. So that's one of the issues that we typically like to see some setback or some different material just to differentiate old to new. That's the first issue.
For sure.
And then the second issue, I think, is just the massing, the size of the new addition. It seems to be almost equal to the existing primary structure. So that, not putting words in other board members, but I think there's some discomfort with just the overall square footage and footprint of the new structure. But please jump in.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think the
Well-
roof massing also, because if I'm looking at this right, the existing roof is 10'5" and 3/8". Is that right?
Yes, that sounds about right.
And the other roof is almost 4 foot taller, and it's, huge compared to the existing building.
I think the purpose there was to try to differentiate between,
But it overlaps it overlaps.
yes,
the
because
original
as of
building
now, it's that
halfway.
conditioned space.
Yeah.
I think when I first met with Anna and we spoke, we talked about conceptually that idea of like a walkway or something.
Like a dog
Yeah,
breezeway.
dog truck.
correct.
Yeah.
And that was part of our discussion. So that's not, it doesn't throw me off, or I fully respect and understand the purpose of that design feature. I think what I wanted to clarify about that earlier was that that's why I asked if it could be conditioned space, because I don't really know, I'm thinking about how it would be utilized on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to have that as exterior space connecting the two, where, I mean, it would make more sense to be conditioned, in my view, whether that's a window or a breezeway, but what I want to make sure is that it can be fully enclosed.
Thomas, do you know what a hyphen is? You understand what that is? Or
I think conceptually I
just
do.
in bringing the corners in and having some kind of corridor to then you can go back to a footprint.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what the board's saying, that the sizing, I think the board owes you better guidance than they've given you. If they're going to deny your motion on something that's not certain, it's not in the guidelines per se. But in terms of the hyphen, I think you've got pretty good, either dog trot or a hyphen, you've gotten pretty clear direction of what the board
Yeah.
would approve. And so I think we're down to the mass and sizing. You meet the rules, I believe, but I lost. So
No, and
those
that's
that
fine.
one should explain it to you.
And we've seen examples where people have put like glass in the breezeway or dog trot, whatever you want to call it, to kind of show that differential, and then come back out, step forward.
Okay. And as far as you're concerned, is there a problem with the roof line as well, if there's that differentiation?
To me, it seems out of scale. That's what's throwing it out of scale. It's so much bigger than the existing building.
Okay,
That's my opinion.
okay.
So hopefully you have enough to go back to the drawing board. And
Thank you.
moving on to item number E under individual consideration, application 22-100610 West San Antonio.
Not getting rid of me yet.
So can you walk us through that? It's
So-
kind of a reapplication. So.
Yeah, I think many of you may be familiar with our petition last year. Nothing has changed from that design. I think the one aspect of it that was denied last year was the addition of a chimney. And so that is why we're coming back. I mean, not to kind of sound like I'm groveling, but that's a fairly fundamental design attribute for us in that space and how we intend to use it. And, I think, I provided sort of our argument for why it should be considered. I don't think that it's outside of what is a fairly typical feature within Fredericksburg architecture and historical architecture. The intent here is not to create a hulking mass of stone and, we're trying to minimize its impact on the building, on that historical facade. And I know I've said this to Anna before, and there's debate because there's no real evidence one way or the other to prove or disprove it, but it does appear that at one point in time that site could have had a chimney in its life. This house has had multiple changes, iterations, add-ons, subtractions, but I think what we do know is that that front area is probably the most historical aspect of the original structure, whatever that was. But I haven't found a whole lot of evidence that takes me back to when it was originally designed and built, and what was and what was not there, and how those spaces were utilized. But the purpose of this room in the new design is to serve as a formal living room. And I think, when you think about how one would use that space, especially as Annabelle and I get older, there is the full intent to utilize it a lot. And I don't know, I think there's something to be said for a fireplace at the end of the day. So it's kind of something that is more an emotive type need for us. But the fact that we're coming back a year later, I think kind of speaks to the importance.
Anna, you want to walk us through your assessment?
Yes, application 22-100, 610 West San Antonio, an R1 zone, and a medium-rated property. And the applicant is requesting approval to add a new outboard chimney to the west elevation of the main house. And I've cited section 3.24 on chimneys. Item C, do not add new chimneys and stovepipes where not historically present. And this is required for medium-rated properties, required forward from the ridgeline for the front 15 feet.
Can you clarify what that means? I'm sure I'm the only one that didn't understand that.
It'd have to be 15 feet back from the front facade. And let's see. The 1910s vintage house at 610 West San Antonio has a medium rating. The house was significantly altered in the 1950s by the Pinnock family by removing the original Victorian features and enclosing the second floor porch to create a living space, and by adding a bay window left of the front door. 2 rear additions have also been added over time. The proposed outboard chimney would be a new feature not known to have existed before. There is some obvious repair and patching on the west elevation, but it's not obvious if a feature was removed and patched or if it was just rotted wood that was repaired. The addition of the chimney would not be in keeping with section 3.24C.
Board, any discussions or questions for Mr. Austin, especially those who were present last time this came?
Anna, just a question. That statement that I gave you regarding my argument for why it should be considered an exceptional design, has the board seen that, or
It did not somehow make it to the packet, and I apologize. I don't have access to my drive, so I can't pull it up unless I can get it from the email.
I'm happy to read it.
Okay, yeah,
that's
if you've got it,
okay.
please do.
You guys okay with
Yeah.
that? Okay. So I submitted this to Anna as part of the package. Is there a specific term for what this is? Is it my statement? Okay. With respect to the City of Fredericksburg's Historic District Design Guidelines and Standards, we are filing a COA and petitioning for the HRB's approval to add a chimney to our home on the basis of exceptional design. The proposed chimney visually anchors the symmetry of the gable on the west facing side of the house. Furthermore, a chimney is in line with historical Fredericksburg architectural vernacular, and the proposed composition and size of the chimney would not detrimentally affect the historical attributes of the home. It is also of significant importance to us to be able to have and use the chimney in the proposed front living room. It has material impact on the design aesthetic and functionality of the space. Thank you.
The board, what are your thoughts on this?
I have a question. Is this going to be a wood burning fireplace or gas logs?
Honestly, Richard, I don't have a specific.
Because you could get your fireplace with gas logs and not even show it to the outside, which would save you a lot of money, and also we could retain the guidelines like that.
But the fireplace would take away interior space, or no, in that?
But aren't you asking for bookshelves on both sides of it?
Yes, sir.
So if you did a 19-inch or zero clearance, they're 22 inches deep.
Okay. And then as far as
it's in a public room, so you don't have to have it vented.
Okay. Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I've seen some other ones where they're vented, but they're vented through just a small, maybe 3 or 4
They could be
foot
vented
box
out the back.
Out the back. Yeah.
I mean, the other issue is not only the fireplace, you're asking to take away the existing windows too. So the board needs to be aware of that there's a window change also on that elevation.
On which windows, Richard, are we taking away? There are no windows currently on that, on the ground floor.
So are the
The
lower elevation is the correct one that's current?
Excuse me?
Is this the elevation that's current? That's the other side.
No, this is all new. This is all showing new.
So this is the side we're on. So there's no windows down here?
That's if you have this photograph.
Yeah. Okay. So anyhow, you could do a ventless and you wouldn't have any chimney.
Okay.
To achieve the interior purpose without affecting the outside.
Fair enough.
I think a couple different options to do that. I think the biggest issue is I was present last time this was brought to the board. I think your comments were all very valid about how a typical chimney is very relevant in Fredericksburg and it anchors buildings visually. The issue is within our ordinance with a medium rated house, we're not supposed to add things to the house that weren't there previously. And Anna has went out and looked, and we just haven't found the evidence that there was an outboard chimney there previously. So the issue is adding something that wasn't there, given the rating of your house. And so that was that's why I think
so. Like a low rating would be, you would be able to consider it, or.
Well, basically, with a low rating, you could razz the house.
Okay.
And so we have given different ratings have different regulations. So absolutely, you could probably be a bit more lenient with a low rating than the current medium rating.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for your demeanor and your patience in a frustrating process. There's really no exception on this one. The only other thing, I like Richard's idea, but I don't know if you could put that fireplace on the back wall. Probably have to still be some issues of what the chimney and how far it comes above the ridge line. That may be a possibility to discuss with Dan. I know it crowds the island, but I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your patience.
Oh, sure.
I know it's frustrating, but this is this is pretty black and white for us to see.
Understood.
Yeah. So, but also, I love the fact that no the first time, come back again. But I think it's going to be no unless the ordinance gets amended every time you come back.
It's a beautiful home as well. So you're obviously taking very good care of it, and appreciate that.
Sure.
I know your neighbors appreciate it as well. So, any further discussions or a motion to approve or deny this application?
I actually have a question. Shutters are not shown in these drawings. Are you removing them?
Yes, I think that was the purpose last year.
Yes, so last year they had a pretty significant application, lots of modifications, and everything was approved except the chimney.
Before you guys, can I at some point email you just for some more details about what you're proposing? Thank you.
And please use Anna any way that you
I
would like
think
to.
Anna, I was looking at our email thread. I think it's almost 70 emails at this point. So I think she's had enough of me at this point.
That's right. Okay, board.
Glad to help you get it done.
How about a motion?
So with that, I'll make a motion to deny your application.
Is there a second? I'll second. Further discussion. Okay, Shelby, can you read that just for clarity?
Richard Laughlin made a motion to deny application 22-100 as presented. I did not catch the second.
It was Joe. What? Joe?
Yeah,
okay. Second. All those in favor of denying the application, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you, Mr. Moss.
Thanks. Have a good evening.
Moving on. Other items for discussion. Item number A, discussion and possible recommendation on the replacement of the Cross Mountain Cross, pages 55 through 66 of our packet. Hi.
Hi, good evening. Andrea Schmidt, Parks Department here for the city. We were here last month and brought you a couple of different examples of designs for Cross Mountain Cross for its replacement by the Nimitz Rotary Club. At that time, it seems like it was pretty much a unanimous recommendation to go back and try to make the design as close to the existing cross, which is what they've done. So we're coming back. It's just a very simple design, flat. Everything will be as close to the current design as possible. We did go up and measure it, and the height is about 18.5 feet. So we'll try to be right as close as we can get to that, but still having a good base. I also reached out to the McDonald Observatory to talk about lighting the cross, so that y'all could have a little bit of information on that and see if there was one way or another that you would prefer us to go. I did send them our city ordinance. I sent them pictures of the cross. So he read that, and he said, we do have three options. We can do uplighting, which is the easiest and is the way we would prefer to do it. They said we can stay within the ordinance. It says the ordinance allows for lights to be unshielded, so as long as the intensity is below 300 lumens. He says this isn't very much, but it might be just enough to illuminate enough to be seen from a distance. It'll say relatively little light is required, especially if it remains painted white, which is what the plan would be, to stick to as close as what it is right now. And the viewers would be able to see the cross against the background sky. It will still be very high even if the light is dim. Another option would be downlighting that is more dark skies friendly, but could interfere with the aesthetics of the cross. We would have to do some changes in the design to put the wiring internally. And then the last one would be recessed lighting, which is the best option from a dark skies and aesthetic standpoint, but also would be the most expensive, and require redesigning the cross. So we kind of like to avoid that one, but it sounds like we can go with the uplighting. We can at least try that, do the 300 lumens. It is dark skies compliant, and see if we can see it from a distance. And our electric department would handle that. But we wanted to, before we bring this back to City Council for them to get us final approval on the design, we wanted to come to you again just to see if going back with just a very simple cross like that's what's up there now would be okay.
So this one is a 20 by 20 box?
It's the same as what's up there right now. Hold on just a minute.
I was wondering what's the existing.
The existing base is about 30 by 30 at the bottom, and then it, I don't know if you have a picture. Yeah, here we go. So right here, this part down here is about 30 by 30.
Right.
And then it slopes down with probably more like
So the main part of it is 22 by 22?
yeah, something like pretty close to that. So we'll have whatever that is, we'll stick to that, and it'll be a metal cross painted white.
I go up there twice a week, so I should take measure next time.
Yeah, these are my notes from the other day when I went up there and was measuring all kinds of stuff.
Board, what do you guys think?
Do we have any idea what the current lighting is that's on it?
It's as you can see on the picture, it's just exposed.
Right, but what's the total wattage of that
I
compared to
don't
what
know
you're
what-
going to?
I don't know what that is.
Those are probably 30
Just
30
60
watt
watt
bulbs or
bulbs.
something. I mean,
It might be. They were covered until they got repainted. They were actually covered with a metal grating to keep birds out and to keep people from
16,
shooting them.
17.
But actually, since they've come
If it's
down, we
100,
haven't had
it's
any
17.
problems. Knock on wood.
So if they're 100 watt bulbs, then that's 1700. It would- Well, it's lumens, not watts. So.
I'm not an electrician. I don't know how to do the conversions.
Anybody
Sorry.
You guys like it? Or?
Yes, LED. Yeah, we've pretty much switched everything over to LED now.
Would there be any way that you could put a little bit larger at the bottom of it with metal to make it look just like this one? Make it flare out as opposed to just a big.
Just the
piece of pipe?
straight design down.
Yeah. Just a thought.
We could try to do that. Yes, try to get it as close to that as
Yeah,
what
just
it is. Yeah, to match it.
Right.
Right. I know the last time we had a curved design, and then we had one that was kind of at a peak and an angle. So we went back, and it's just very simple now.
So I think that, at least in my opinion, and just one person here, I think the size of it's fine. But if you could put the base out to 30 or 32 inches like the existing one, that would give it a profile. Be pretty similar.
Okay.
And the lighting, I'm open on the lighting.
We're trying to stay dark skies compliant. That's our main goal is to stay dark skies compliant, but still for it to be able to be seen from a distance, but not to be too bright community that's right below it. So, and I think this is a good starting point right here. And then there was another expert in town we're going to talk to as well to see what he has to say.
Will it be like a new concrete base for it?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Same location or push back a little bit?
We've discussed possibly putting it just behind
Because of
the existing
erosion?
cross, yes. And then that way they can work on building the new cross while the old cross is still there. So we have something and then we can take down the old cross. The new cross is up. But we have to make sure that there's enough room to move equipment, which I think there is. Because probably park staff will borrow some water department equipment to go up there to dig we'll probably do piers instead of, if it's engineered that piers will support it rather than just doing a big hole.
You live right below there. Is the lighting a problem?
Maybe. It's very bright.
Is it?
It's very. I was we neighbor across the street.
Mhm.
And he has kept track of the light bulbs for years and he made a routine call every time.
Yeah, he doesn't want me to ever call him back. He just leaves a message saying, just letting you know. I haven't gotten a call from him in a while, though, now that you say that. Yeah.
So you guys good with the design?
Oh, I don't know. Powder coated finish? Yes. This is Carlton Turner. He's with the Nimitz Rotary that are going to be funding the cross replacement.
And that is one of the benefits of renting a powder coating company that part of it. I understand a very expensive part of the process.
Right. Right. Thanks. So hopefully you got enough to keep
I
moving
think so.
forward.
Yes. So we'll go back to council here in a little while. Get them to give us a final approval on the design. They've already given us the go ahead on just conceptually. So just trying to get details worked
Just
out.
get a little wider base at the bottom, and I think it'll look.
And the 30, that Andrew was talking about, the 30-inch base going up, and then it does slope up a little bit.
Tapered up. Yeah.
We want to
Yeah, basically just duplicate what we have now.
That's good. That's good.
Roughly the same dimensions. Right. That way it looks a little different than some of the other ones that are popping up all around the counties.
Got that last.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You bet. Okay. Moving on, item number B, discussion potential project to recreate the school behind the AME church, pages 67 through 83. So please come up and introduce yourself to the board and walk us through what you'd like to do.
Hi, my name's Gary Hunter, and that's the power behind the scenes. My wife, Tammy. Over the years, we came, I think, in 2015, we began with the actual restoration process of the church. And since then, we've come quite a ways. But right now, well, when we first started restoring the church, we learned about the schoolhouse, which is on Schubert Street. It's at 105 East Schubert. And through the whole restoration process, as we restored the church and built the bathrooms, we've made several attempts to see what we can do about acquiring the schoolhouse. And I have the original paperwork from Miss Elise Coward, who ended up with the schoolhouse. But our best efforts to either buy it or move it have failed, I believe, because it's obviously an historical structure, but I think it's a museum almost, or classified in that category. But right now at there it is right there. The schoolhouse actually belongs to the people who live at 107 Schubert. And I've talked to him about it. He even came and got a picture of my mother standing in front of the school when she was like 8 years old. But he's not interested in donating it, getting rid of it, moving it. So what our proposal was, as we worked on the church, the land, we've gotten all the way almost to the back of the property, but we can't really finish. The school is an integral part of the story of good colored people in Gillespie County. That was the name on the original title deed when the property was sold by Oscar Bassi to my great-grandfather and the rest of the colored family that had been freed from slavery. So, and Anna, thank you so much. I couldn't have done this. There is a picture here. Here we go. I don't have a pointer, but what we're talking about is basically right here. There's a drop-off back here where it goes into the floodplain, where I'm going to say 20 yards to 30 yards before that. And the school itself is 13 by 26. So it's not large at all. It's just over 300 square feet on the ground. And this is an older picture. We've actually irrigated all of this. You can see where the irrigation stops when you look at the church property. And I can't do any irrigating to the very, very back of the property until we learn whether or not we're going to be allowed to put a schoolhouse there. We want to build a replica. Since we can't get the original, we'd like to build a replica. We really feel like it's important to tell the entire story of what transpired here in Fredericksburg back in the 1870s. So that's basically what I'm here.
Hannah, do you want to have any comments on that before we open up the discussion?
Yes, I mean, I cited the Secretary of the Interior's standards, actually printed that section of the booklet for you. Because reconstruction's a pretty tricky thing to get it right. Just because of the material availability and the way it was constructed, to be able to do that in a modern way with modern materials. But I think we've got some pretty good documentation to work with, so that's fortunate. and the original's still standing. And I think we can decipher what, you know, what's been replaced, like the vent hood.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. Um, so we can pretty easily discern what's original and not. And then I think you've just got to kind of choose, you know, how close to the original you can actually go. Are you going to put ductwork in it? Is it going to be conditioned? Or is it just going to be, you know,
The original.
original? Because those are things you'll need to plan for, right? If you're going to do electricity and plumbing, or if it's just going to be a single room, right? Was it just a single room?
The one that's there right now has actually got a small kitchen, small restroom. It's in the back, and you really can't see it from this picture there. Are there any more pictures of this? Right here.
The south side of it.
Right. It protrudes a little bit, but it's attached to. So I'm not really sure exactly what we'll be allowed to build. I know that I have a picture of my mother in front of the schoolhouse. So I'm really unsure where to go. I'd like to build a duplicate. You know, if that's the original, you know, I would prefer to have the original, obviously. But since we can't do that, we have this one to go by. I would be at, well, y'all would have to tell me what I can do exactly and what I couldn't do. But I know that it's not very large. We have enough room on the property, and it would be the last piece, not the last piece, but it would be a very integral part of the storyline, you know, that we've been trying to recreate here. So
I had three questions for you.
Sure.
Okay, and the first one's probably most important. And based on the information that I've been able to research on doing reconstruction, thank you, Anna, for giving us a lot in our packet. But I guess the big question is the reconstruction essential to the public understanding of the property?
yes,
How does it tell the story? Does it help tell the story of the colored church and what was the facilities that were there and the services that it originally provided?
right. The actually, it's you say essential. It predated the church. The school was on property owned by the Bassies. Oscar Bassie actually sold a piece of property right there. It's Lee Street, where the church sits right now, to the colored people of Gillespie County. Prior to that, the colored people go to school at the schoolhouse.
Okay.
Once the church got built, it started to double as a school and a church. And the schoolhouse got sold and moved around and eventually ended up on Schubert Street. So yeah, it's essential to the storyline.
So then my second question is location, because based on Ms. Coward's recollection of it that was included in the packet, looked like the location of it was next to the church.
Right.
Or,
And
but that's probably not possible.
I did an interview with Dorothy Bassie, who actually lived on that property. And I've heard a couple of different stories. Some say that it sat where kebabs, or the old kebabs, used to sit. Other people remember it sitting by the old oak tree on the vacant lot that's for sale next to the church. So, you know, I mean, there's been,
Okay.
yeah.
And then I guess my last question is, which version would you want to recreate? Because it's obviously based on the history of it. As Anna pointed out, it originally didn't have bathrooms, didn't have electricity. It was just a one-room school that has been added onto. So
I would really rather recreate the newer version, simply by virtue, for the reasons that it's going to be an information center. Okay, it's going to be a place for people to, as they walk the grounds, they can come in, and some of the questions like you've just asked, you know, can be answered. Photographs, old photographs, history, and, you know, but it always helps to have restroom facilities. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm almost 70 years old, so I don't pass up restrooms. That would just be a personal preference, though. You know, I'll go with whatever I need, but I really feel strongly about the fact that we need to have a replica of the old schoolhouse. We can't get the original replica of the old schoolhouse to tell the entire story. What do you guys think?
I do have a comment. Since this will be a new construction, it needs to be brought up to code, like bathrooms for accessibility reasons and accessibility to the entry door, things like that. So
Right. I didn't measure the door, but I don't really see any problem with that. The existing building, that door, there's only about 6 inches. It's not a very high step up at all. So,
yeah, but it's not going to work for wheelchair.
right, I mean, but that
need to
can,
be able to roll onto the
right.
porch.
We had that same issue with the church because it had steps going up to it, and what we did was we modified the sidewalk so that the sidewalk would come up to
Yes,
that
it's a
level.
good option.
Yes.
So I was part of the Methodist youth that scraped the church and redid it in '76.
I probably have your picture.
Probably so.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I'd be willing to help you get drawings for this project through our company.
Wow.
Anyhow, I got
That
a lot of time invested in this too. So
would be amazing. You're probably in there with my cousin Paul.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
So
we
it's-
just wanted to get,
So it sounds like the overall support of a reconstruction of an old building that you have the buildings in town. It's just been highly modified and modernized.
And not
but it's-
available to them.
and that's where I would be looking to y'all for a whole lot of direction too. I can duplicate anything, okay, as far as the carpentry work is concerned, but the limitations.
Who's the owner of that property?
I have access to them.
That's not Cece, is it?
No, she doesn't own it anymore, but some people they came from Houston on it. And
Which property is that?
I'm talking about who owns the current schoolhouse on Schubert.
Oh, the last person that I talked to, his name was Mike Sherwood. He owned 107. So I'm assuming he owns the church, the school as well.
I would agree with you. I think it tells the story of Fredericksburg, early Fredericksburg, and the inhabitants. So I think it's a cool idea. I'd probably lean more on reproducing, reconstructing the original building, one room with not a lot of bells and whistles to really help tell the story at the time, as opposed to making it super modern.
Right.
That's just one idea.
No, and I do understand your position. My difficulty would be is I don't have any pictures of what the original looked like on the inside.
Luckily, Ms. Cowart gave you some indication of the add-on on the back, the change of the hip roof on the south side. So I'm sure a really good builder like Lawson could get into it and take a look at it and probably give you a really good, accurate idea of what the original looked like.
Right. My curiosity was always there is a loft inside of the one, and I didn't know whether that would be an original. Did the teacher stay there? There's just 100 questions about the original that I just don't know. So
I think this is a lot like Fort Martin, Scott, where we have replica buildings, but it tells the story.
Right. I think you're getting overwhelming support to start with something. Not exactly sure.
Well, the designs, you just don't, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing and just the way you're going about it and the humility and the persistence and what you've already accomplished. It's fantastic. Thank you for doing that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
This on the sand maps?
I checked, and it's just outside the Sanborn maps.
I'd always heard this was actually a city street where this was sit, but it was actually city property it was sit on, not Patsy.
That's what I
Right
understood
away.
too. It's Lee Street. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
and it's the same width as the street. It's not a full 100-foot width.
It explains why the school district used it for storage. Yeah, 'cause back then.
Gary, and thank you for bringing this to our attention and all the work that you've done on it. I love this photo. Actually, every time I back out of Dollar General, I really like take a mental picture and really appreciate this because I know this view won't be there forever. But I just it's one of my favorite views and scenes in Fredericksburg. So thank you for all that you've done. I've got a question though. So, going on the history and when it was called the colored school and the different names for the church, what do you call it? What should we call how should we refer to it?
The CME Church, Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. That's what's on the historical marker. And as far as I know, that's what all my relatives have always called it.
CME, not the AM.
Yeah.
They're both African American churches, just a little bit of difference in doctrine, I guess.
And what should we call the school as a result? So what would you prefer?
I hadn't really thought about it. The colored schoolhouse, I guess. No, I know there's a lot of terms that black folks like to use. I personally use black. I'm not real crazy about African American. Don't know any African. But I think the acceptable term at the time was colored because the church, the CME Church, at that was referred to as the Colored Methodist Episcopal Church. Now it's called the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, but I'll probably say the colored schoolhouse would be the best.
You just tell us what you would like us to refer to it as. So.
Yeah, the colored schoolhouse.
Thanks. Good luck. Good luck.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
You bet. Moving on, item number C, discussion of possible action of an appointment for a member of the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. So, Anna, could you bring folks up to speed on what that is and what all the goodies that are going to accompany this membership will
So the city has officially kicked off the comprehensive plan. Our consultants came down a couple weeks ago and had some initial focus group meetings and advisory committee meetings. And that it's grown quite a bit. Initially we tried to keep it to 15, but there's so many people that need to be represented. And one of those spots should be from the Historic Review Board. So we've got an opening on the advisory committee. We've also got some focus groups that have already met. Housing, education, hospitality, business. And then they're coming again November 10th. So the next meeting, we're going to have focus group meetings on November 10th.
But the commitment for this will be how many meetings?
Advisory committee, it's only supposed to meet about 6 times over the 12 to 14 month process. So it's not a huge time commitment, but we'd want somebody that is engaged and will do outreach and kind of help spread the word amongst their peers, because we do need a lot of participation from all citizens.
The overall intent of the advisory, the subject of the review is for the next.
Yeah, so the comp plan is looking forward up to 20 years. And it'll break it down. What should we be doing in 5 years and 10 years? How do we want to grow or not grow? What are those things that are important to preserve beyond the historic district? I think we've done a good job of that, but thinking, towards the future, what new development could impact potentially historic districts. But it's not meant to be a huge time commitment, but it's more of a steering committee, just making sure we've got a pretty good representation.
The board, this is your opportunity it is an opportunity to look forward for the next 20 years and
I think Amy should do it.
I'm happy to take ideas, so I can make an appointment. Would anyone like to do it? If no one wants to do it, I guess. Richard, you didn't. Right. Okay. Right. So I'll appoint Richard to that committee unless anyone else wants to arm wrestling for it.
Thank you for the vote of confidence.
Yeah.
I'll get you the details.
Let me change mine as an alternate. So, great. So thank you, Richard, for offering to do that. And I had one more question, and based on our last meeting, did the city send a letter to Miss Jenkins? That was the last applicant.
She called, so we had a conversation. She's putting in a good faith effort. She's, contacted her guy to come clean it up. And so she verbally told me the things that she was going to do. So I've not sent the letter yet, but it's one of those things like, it'll get pushed to the side, and in 3 months I'll be like, oh yeah, maybe nothing's been done. So it's still on my list, but she did call to reach out and say that she's trying to address it.
We want to stay on top of that and keep the ball rolling on it. And as long as the owner's making progress, then that's great. The moment that kind of stops, and we probably need to send a letter and start the ball rolling.
Also, just to let you know that the Grand Central on Milam was approved the 2 signs last night at ZBA. So getting 2 instead of 1. And your recommendation was a big part of that. So. And then we have the NAPC, the National Alliance of Preservation Commissioners webinar is this Thursday. I think Amy and Liliana said you to come up to City Hall to watch that webinar. So just a reminder on that. Anybody else is welcome to join.
What time is that on Thursday?
Noon? Is it noon? Yeah. Sure it's noon.
Great. And with that completes our agenda for the evening. Happy to take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So be it. Adjourn.
You're supposed to say we all.